Okay, so good morning. Today I want to touch on a subject that's a bit touchy in an emotional kind of way, but I think it's a conversation we need to have, and it's a conversation around the whole issue of education standards in the country, and I think it really came to the fore when we looked at the issue of ZIALE. I think a lot of people realized that there was the ZIALE issue. And the story, the gist, in case you crawled from under a rock and didn't get this, the gist is that 1 out of 394 students, or is it 395? I'm not too sure. 1 out of 395 or 394, somebody can correct it for me. One only passed. They got passed. And that really raised some major questions. Like, A, why has there been such a bad pass rate at ZIALE? So that's the argument. And there's been a number of theories pushed out. Two major ones stand out. The first one is the quality of students that are being churned out of the colleges and universities is low. That's the first theory. The second group say there is a conspiracy at ZIALE that is designed to block people from entering the law fraternity. Now, to be honest, I don't think anyone has done any research, and if there's an inquest, it must be done to ascertain if there's any truth to that. I really will not dwell on that second point. I don't personally think there's a conspiracy. There could be one, but I just don't think as much of that conspiracy as I do of the first point, that the standards are dropping. And why do I say this? For a number of reasons. And so, in order to justify my argument, I'm going to begin by quoting an article I wrote a number of months ago, and this was posted in Daily Mail. I call it the 7 major factors to transforming Africa, and under that series we're looking at the second factor, which is raise your standards. And I want to use the standards argument to prove that there's been a deep drop in the quality of what we have. So now that let me dig in a bit deep with that. Let's talk about standards. So what is a standard? Real quick. It is usually something used as a measure, norm, or model in comparative evaluations. This ensures that performance can be repeated consistently and results made predictable based on given variables and inputs. One could also call it a level or quality of attainment. Sorry. Now, where performance is sought, standards become the means by which that performance is gauged. That's very important, okay? Without those standards, anything goes. As the saying states, where purposes are known, abuse is inevitable, okay? Standards are set when purpose is known, but purpose in and of itself means nothing if there are or is no mission attached to it. Okay, so purpose is the reason why something or someone exists, like an institution or an organization, and service is what that entity does to serve a need, and work is how that service is executed. So service is always given to those who need it, hence the reason purpose comes in. Now, the delivery of service is what determines relevance, and in order for the service to be worthwhile, there must be a standard by which the service is measured, and that's why standards matter. Now, I'm going to delve a bit into this. You see, we have to look at the holistic picture of what's going on. Now, there are 2 purposes for education, all right? The first purpose is to empower or emancipate the owners of that education, meaning the one receiving it, the subject, the recipient. That's the first purpose. The second purpose of education is to empower the recipient with the means in terms of skill to meet a need in society. So the older type of education functioned to feed industry, all right? So you need engineers, you need lawyers, you need doctors, you need weather, and all these people will be trained in an institution which starts with primary, secondary, tertiary, and then they'll specialize and then be churned out to go and feed industry. So that's one side of education. And the other side is the one I talk about, which is totally open, and that one deals with the concept of the 4 key needs of education as far as I'm concerned. Number 1, the ability to read. That means reading and understanding what you're reading. 2, the ability to write, meaning take your ideas, putting them on paper. Number 3, the ability to count, meaning keeping track of your progress. And number 4, the ability to innovate, which means taking what you've learned and using it profitably to the benefit of society. That's the 4 key functions of what good education is. Now, the first form, which is, feeding into industry, that's very critical, because for industry to perform, the quality of what's being churned out must be good. And it is where my argument comes in. I am of the view that that quality has dropped. Let me show you something. Let's use standards according to accounting. Okay, I'm going to use that because I think that's really going to put the point across. Okay, there are 4 types of standards which I'm going to outline. The first is the ideal standard. The 2 is the perfect standard. The 3rd is the maximum efficiency or theoretical standard. Okay, now these kinds of standards are the quality of output which can be attained under the most favorable conditions possible. So simply put, these can be achieved with minimal to zero wastage of all inputs, whatever those may be. Now this kind maximizes all raw materials and resources to produce the most efficiently generated result possible. So we're looking at a case where this product that's being sought is using a standard that completely minimizes wastage. That's not attainable. That's a dream. It can be attained. But that's what associations, organizations, any kind of system should be striving to attain. And this, for me, is where we are losing it. Okay, now let me give you an example of Kaizen. Kaizen is Toyota's product. Okay, the idea is to always be improving. Never settle for where you are. As you can tell, this principle is the reason Toyota has been consistently the #1 car brand in the world and has held that position for 13 years continuously, since 2008, okay? When they surpassed General Motors to become the highest valued car brand. And General Motors, by the way, held that position for 77 years. Now that's standards at work, okay? So for Toyota, Kaizen is a culture. That's why they are a formidable brand. And you see, let me ask you a question, frankly and honestly. Look at the standards that we have in Zambia today. Can you, where you are right now, testify that we're at the top notch? Can you even testify that we're even at acceptable standards? I said in my post the other day, if you listen to if you read the language and spelling and structure and grammar that's being given by grade 12s today in English, it's cringeworthy. And I don't want anybody here telling me, hey, but it's the colonizers. Forget about the colonizers' rubbish. This is our lingua franca. This is what we communicate in. And if you're going to go into any profession, my friend, your capacity to communicate properly in English in a legible, coherent, and consistent manner is an absolute bare minimum requirement. I was told by a number of people that one of the challenges ZIALE had, in spite of their issues, is that they noted with grave concern the inability of a number of its clients, which are the students, to cohesively and coherently argue their cases using facts on the ground. So, cohesively and coherently argue their cases using facts on the ground. The language we use in this country is English. We cannot run away from that fact. So the issue here is the standard. We have a drop in standard of what is being churned out of those universities. But you see, are you going to really blame the universities? One very interesting character on my wall actually said, how do you expect, this is what he said, and I had to agree with him. He's usually very contrarian. He always argues with most things I post. But he said a very valid point. He said, how do you expect as a pupil to learn English correctly when they're being taught in Bemba? Okay, I found that hilariously funny, but he had a point. You're teaching English in Bemba. You're mispronouncing words. I understand there's the issue of accents. Granted. But you're mispronouncing words, you're using wrong tenses, you're using prepositions at the wrong place and all these, prefixes and whatever. Everything, the structure, the grammar, it's all messed up. Your comprehension is minimal. And then you are now teaching this to these new people, these youngsters. The question is, what quality of teachers are we having? But the bigger question is it the teacher's fault? No. I think somebody showed me something profound the other day. They told me that consistently since from 2020, I don't know what 2021 looks like, but from 2019 going back, the education budget has consistently shrunk. You have a situation where one teacher is teaching 100 pupils. Forget about 100, even 70 pupils. There's no way one teacher is going to be effective in teaching 70 pupils. It's not even the standard recommended. Go to private schools today or go to the education standard itself from the Ministry of Education, and the standard is supposed to be 25 to 30 pupils per teacher. Why 25 to 30? Because it gives the teacher the opportunity to really focus on helping the pupils that are having learning and cognitive challenges to be guided further. But you have a situation where there are 70, 80 pupils in a class. You tell me how that teacher is going to manage. When it comes to assignments, the teacher, how do they give pupils assignments or homework? Pupils bring this back and then they mark. What time are they going to mark? 80? And then what time are they going to have to focus on the ones who are challenged and help show them how to get past this challenge? It can't work. That's just way too many pupils. And then remember, we're talking about very few teachers on average, because we know for a fact that there's a backlog of new teachers being hired because government couldn't afford to hire new teachers because, well, frankly, there's no money to pay them. The wage bill is already huge in the country. So you're not hiring teachers. You're not hiring teachers, new teachers, to help fill the gap that is obviously needed. 2, you build all these schools, but you're not providing any form of learning aids. I remember even in my time, I don't know what it's like now, but in my time, we never used the labs in our classes. At school we had labs, but the labs were classes for starters. And then secondly, we never did any practicals in those labs. There was never oxygen, there was never hydrogen, there was never, what's that stuff that lights up? I think it's peroxide something. I've forgotten what it's called. No, phosphorus. There was never phosphorus. There was never any chemical that we could use to demonstrate physics. Sorry, not physics, chemistry. All right, so you tell me how these kids are supposed to learn all these things and you haven't even got the equipment to teach with. It's not the teacher's fault, it's not the school's fault, it is squarely the provider of these things, which is government's fault. So you're not hiring people, you're not bringing teaching aids. In my time, at primary level, textbooks were given. Now, this was really a long time ago. I'm talking about 1980, I think, or 81. That's when I do recall when they would give textbooks. But I remember when I was in Tanzania, I did a bit of my primary school there, like grade 1 to 2, somewhere there, grade 1, grade 2. I remember we used to sign to get textbooks. We used to sign to get exercise books. We used to sign to get pencils. There was a deliberate drive by the government of Tanzania at that time, and I know Zambia replicated it. They would actually give all these textbooks and pencils and stuff. The only thing parents would be buying probably are mathematical sets when you get to grade 8 and stuff like that. But there was a lot that was given by the Ministry of Education to the schools, which were then distributed to all these schools all across the country, and then pupils from the smallest place in the middle of nowhere would have all these teaching aids. So that's what was going on back in the day. And you can imagine what that did for the quality of education, because there were teaching aids. That's what I'm trying to get at. So teachers were not so frustrated with their work. They used to issue pens, for crying out loud. Now look at where we are today. No pens, no pencils, no rubbers, no rulers, nothing. So this is up to the parents to buy the stuff. And then I'm not even going to go into the cost of buying exercise books. Let's just stick with the point, which is the quality of teachers. Recently, there was a big argument about removing the grade 7 exams so that all kids just jump straight to grade 9. There's a reason why exams exist. It is to identify whether people are ready to transcend to the next level. Grade 8 and grade 9, you know very well, I know the syllabus has changed, I don't know what it's like now, but I remember that in our time, grade 8 and grade 9 is when you now split things a bit. You got into a number of other subjects that became more detailed. You know, social studies became civics, and geography and history, which were all kind of bundled together at primary level, and these became uniquely separate, and they could then go on and specialize. You go into grade 10, 11, and 12, and we could go deeper. Okay, and I like this. Yona Kaonga is saying something very important. They're saying we now have a situation in higher learning institutions where students have just focused on passing exams rather than learning the concepts. We now have businesses specialized in doing assignments for students. All a student needs is money to pay. This is very true. I have been on my own wall. I have individuals, I won't mention their names, who actually advertise those who want assignments done. Now you tell me, ladies and gentlemen, let's just be real here. A lot of people want to blame ZIALE and say, oh, ZIALE, there's a conspiracy. And I'm not going to speak as an expert. Maybe there's one. I don't know. Maybe there's a conspiracy. But let's be real honest here. Let's just be frank and truthful. Do you really think there's a conspiracy, or do you really believe that we've lost our standards? I am more of the view that we have lost our standard. I am more of the view that the quality of students coming out just sucks. That's it. There's no other excuse. We are at a place where we have students that are literally passing because they, for lack of a better word, cheated their way through. So if university and graduation is about continuous assessment, and all these assignments we give during the course of our studies count towards our final, then yes, we have a totally messed up bunch of students. Now let me show you as we close the implication of that. You see, people don't understand that there's a reason standards exist. Standards exist so that you're able to eliminate the chaff from the wheat. Why? Because when it matters, when it's life and death, the student and the individual that is properly tested will perform. It's not about ego tripping, because I notice nowadays, even in schools now, it's like there's no losers anymore. Even the ones who come out last, this whole ego thing. No, you did your best and it's okay. This political correctness, I sometimes fail to understand it myself, because I think there was a reason why we did what we did in the past. And if you sucked, you sucked. Go back, get your act together and come back. But if you're going to be ego stroking everybody, even when they're not performing well, I don't think that's helping anyone. But for me, what really concerns me now, let's just get to the point, is the fact that if these people are substandard and you are graduating them as teachers, if these people are substandard, you're graduating them as nurses, do you know the implication on the end of that road? If people are substandard, you are releasing them as engineers. Can you imagine an engineer that doesn't understand his work? Do you know that's what leads to disasters with buildings collapsing? We've had buildings collapse in this country. It's not a secret. We had 2 incidences in this country where buildings collapsed. We've not been given results to this day as to why they collapsed. The first one was that building project that was going on at what is now Lewanika Mall. We know very well that there was a collapse there, and this thing injured and killed some people. I think 1 person or something. Somebody got killed, some people got injured. I don't know if they got maimed for life. This was a building that was being inspected. There was an inspectorate, there were approvers, there was a whole process by which this thing should have been happened. But somebody didn't do their job, and the building almost collapsed. We have a second incident opposite my church, the church where I worship, at Potter's house. Right across at Katungu there was a building, it collapsed. Somebody was injured there. Some people died. I think 1 person died or something. Now, let me ask you a question. How is it possible that buildings can be collapsing in this day and age? Where's the buildings department? Where are the engineers? We had a bridge that had to be redone. Now, I'm telling you things that are real. Now, why am I raising this up? Now, somebody will tell me, no, corruption, whatever. I don't really care about the corruption. I'm talking about the standard. We have engineers, they operate by a certain standard. We have lawyers, they operate by a certain standard. We have accountants, they operate by a certain standard. We have doctors and health practitioners, they operate by a certain standard. That's why we have regulators. The job of regulators is to ensure that they license people who have what it takes to perform. So my question to you, using the building example, would you say that the standards are right? What's the story? Yeah, some people are saying, somebody's saying ZIALE is a business, it needs to be reformed. No, I'm dealing with the student issue. If engineers can have buildings collapsing, what does it tell you about our standard? I know engineers are very, very wonderful people, very serious and professional. How can you have buildings collapsing if there's an engineering fraternity? How can you have bridges which are built to substandard had to be redone if you have engineers who are of standard? So either there are no standard engineers or some process has been messed up. And if, listen to me, if somebody is willing to pay for an assignment, that person has a flawed personality. If they can pay for an assignment, they will pay to corrupt an inspector. They will pay to corrupt anyone because they realize that is how they progress in life. They progress by using money and not by using an oath of professionalism. You see, I raise standards because this is where ethics come from. You see, if you can have a situation, let me bring it home. Let me bring it home. Okay? I'm a pastor. I'm a pastor. We in the pastoring profession, if you like, have what we call a code of ethics. Ethics and standards as a pastor. This code of ethics is a very high standard. But what do we see among the pastors? What are we seeing? We're seeing adulterous pastors. We're seeing pastors who are cheating people. We're seeing pastors that are manipulating people. Is that the standard that the gospel teaches? Of course not. So you're seeing a drop in standards all across the board. That's why even politicians, you see, there should have been professional, upright people getting into the space of politics. What has happened? They are not getting in there. So we're having demagogues and con men and questionable characters getting into politics. They are elected into office. And what do? They bring that demagoguery from their messed up background because they have no standards or ethics to speak about. For them, it doesn't matter. They can steal till they turn blue and they become your leaders. And when they become your leaders, what do? They just bring the standard they had. It's the same thing with the students who are paying for assignments. So if you're watching me and you are even boasting with your outfit and you say, cleared my degree, yet you paid for assignments, you're not real. You're a hypocrite. And you are the people, sorry to be blunt, but you are the people that are messing this country up. So if ZIALE goes and fails everybody, people say there's a conspiracy. Well, let's look at the other side of that coin. Are we receiving quality students into ZIALE? Me, I can say, I don't know about what goes on with ZIALE, but I'm telling it is a definite case of substandard people being churned out of these universities. It's a holistic situation. Teachers are messed up. Institutions are messed up. Universities are messed up. Now, let's talk about lecturers. I am aware personally of some lecturers who are sleeping with students for grades. Okay? This is not a secret. It's an open secret, in short. In short, a lot of people know there are lecturers who take money and there are lecturers who sleep with students. Now, the question is, why are those lecturers even still working? So, my dear friend and roommate just said money. Good, that's the reason. It's about money. If the lecturer is not being paid enough and he's got no ethics and no morals, and if the whole country rewards thieves, because you see, you have to understand that this thing goes deep. You had a situation where thieves, liars, con men, posing as politicians, were getting the big contracts, building flats all over the country, amassing massive wealth. And then here are people that worked genuinely hard, went through the whole education system, got into jobs, and they're earning nothing. And they look at these thieves And they're even parading themselves around and gaining all the good things in life. Most people can't handle that kind of situation. So most said, why am I trying to be good? If thieves are being honored, Chimuntu Chiza, he doesn't even know 1 + 1. He's the one who's dictating to me, who's got a master's degree. He's dictating to me what to do. The man can't even understand the concept note, but he's the one in charge. You see, that's where all these problems start. You go into these ministries. PS, permanent secretary, used to be a position held by someone with the acumen and knowledge. Somebody who brings a level of professionalism. I won't say much about ministers because ministerial positions are executive, so it's different. But with a permanent secretary, these are technocrats. You're supposed to have somebody that's a technical expert in that space. They understand the nitty-gritties of this particular discipline, but what would happen? You get some person who's loyal to the system, and that's the one thrown in there as PS. He doesn't even know analytical thinking. He doesn't understand strategy. He is so inferior in his thinking, he is threatened by his own heads of department. He's threatened by his own directors. Because he can't comfortably sit in that room and debate issues because the man or woman doesn't have what it takes. So now that's your PS. That's the CEO of your ministry. You think that ministry is going to perform? Hello, somebody? You see, we've lowered our standard, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not blame ZIALE or whatever. For me, as far as I'm concerned, our standards have gone to the dogs. And that's why I wrote that statement. Has our education gone to the dogs? For me, the answer, yes, it has. Why has it gone to the dogs? Because of all the factors I've outlined. So we need a total overhaul, ladies and gentlemen, in our entire system when it comes to education, standards, and the quality of individuals that are being placed in these places to deliver a service. One thing I like about the president that he said at the beginning, I hope he can come through with it, he said 2 things will matter. Number 1, you're Zambian. Number 2, you're competent. I think competence for me is everything. Don't just put somebody there just because, oh no, he served the party for a very long time. Can he perform? And then as for the teachers, are we really getting people that really can do the job, or are we just getting cousins of the person of whoever and nepotism all over the place and cronyism? We're not even getting people that are qualified. We're getting people that are loyal because it's a network. And so you bring total rubbish in the local language, nyaka nyaka, that's what you put there, and you're going to expect that nyaka nyaka is going to produce quality. It can't happen. That's what we used to teach in primary school, that 5 minus 20, it can't. Because you can't take a 5 and expect to produce a 20. It won't work. There'll be a minus 15. So meaning you'll be underperforming at maximum level. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason we've seen the standards dropped. Here's my solution as I close. Number 1, let's do a total system overhaul. Let's go right back. Let's bring appraisals. In fact, I honestly thought that one of the things that the new Dawn government would be doing is a total system appraisal for members of staff right across the civil service. Right across the civil service. Teachers are employed by the Ministry of Education. Nurses are employed by the Ministry of Health, those who work in government. And we needed a total overhaul, a total appraisal. We need to go to the regulators, Zambia Medical, I don't know what they call themselves now, Health Practitioners Association, ZIALE, ZICTA, ACCA, Zika, whatever. All these guys, they have to really re-examine their whole entire structure and ask themselves deep penetrating questions like, do we have people that qualify? If we don't, why? What can we do to solve this so that we correct going forward? Because I can assure you, even the quality of teachers, quality of nurses, quality of PSS, quality of many of these civil servants is questionable in the least and totally mediocre at worst. That's what we're looking at. And that's why ZIALE has what it has. Okay, so I close. Let me see what comments you posted. I've seen some very good comments here. So let me just quickly read them. Okay. So let's start with Kapalakash Amwila. A lot of things have gone a wrong way in our society. The education standards are just nothing to talk about. Private training institutions focus on graduating a lot of questionable graduates that transforming themselves into professionals. I agree. That's the commotion we are witnessing in hospitals and schools today and many other key institutions. Our systems are weak. I could not agree more with you, my brother. Andrew Kayumba, yes, there is, ZIALE needs to be reformed, yes, not, but I think we have to be holistic about it. Because you go and you reform ZIALE, but you leave out the bigger problem, which is the dropping education standards. We have to go that way. Let's deal with the source. Senior Oz, I'm advocating for medical exams before one is added to systems like ZIALE. Well, I think they're already doing that, but we just need to enforce and tighten it. Then, Chalala Emmanuel Mulundu says, what we're seeing today is a consequence of our long failed education system. Agreed. We should never cheat ourselves that our education has ever been better. No, it's at its worst. What was the benefit of learning about North America in geography? Our current education system is not responsive to our needs as a country. What we need are education reforms and change in the curriculum. I agree. We don't need to learn about North whatever it is. But I think if you look at geography, you have to understand what is the purpose of geography. So there's nothing wrong with learning about North Saskatchewan, whatever it is, if you are looking at a holistic, overall, relevant component to that education. So we can learn about, thoraxes, we can learn about moons. It really doesn't matter. The point is it relevant to what you're trying to bring out? That's, I think, the most important part. That's why we need a holistic approach in revising our education to suit the needs on the ground. And I'm told the Curriculum Development Center has done a phenomenal job in that. The issue has been the funding. We need funding in the education sector and proper funding so that we get proper teachers being admitted into the Ministry of Education to go out there and teach. We need proper teachers being tested in these so-called training institutions because some of them are highly, highly questionable. All right? Sir Bright Wope Chama says we need to restructure. Yes, we do. And then Karijatu Najiru, I think, says, when you use traditional metrics such as grades only to determine if someone qualifies to get into an institution, then definitely you will have situations. Yep. You will have such situations. So there is need to use other metrics that can give good overall picture of students, so a proper appraisal. Now, Zambian institutions don't require things such as personal statements, personality tests, and other things that will give a better overall picture of a candidate. Better standards require better and more refined means of measuring a candidate's ability. This will be a good first step. Yeah, if the quality that is coming out is good. Okay, then Mike Notulu, in my view, there are a number of reasons that cause this drop in education standards. Let me give two possible reasons. There might be an IQ and there might be a low IQ. No, not true, I disagree. All right, then Karijatu Najiru, optimize admissions process across the board. Higher standards will deliver on quality at the end of the day, okay? Isaiah Phillips Akintola, this is the reality in Africa, unfortunately. A change is certainly needed if we must become an innovative team, of course. He also goes on to say, always great listening to you when I have opportunity. Thanks, man. All righty, thank you so much. So that's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. It is what it is. The standards have dropped. The education standards are going to the dogs, and if we do not do something about it, they will arrive there and stay there. And so we must completely do an overhaul. So I'm hoping to anybody that's in power, authority with decision-making powers, a total system appraisal is needed. We've got powerful consultants in the country, and where we lack, you can always bring the foreign ones, but get the local people on board. Let's do a total overhaul. Let's do a full assessment so that we determine where is the problem, and then using transformative leadership or transformative thinking or thought leadership, we look at the vision of what we want to achieve, we look at the ideal scenario for education standards, and then we work backwards to see what are the issues, the how. Bring in the technocrats now to deal with the how, to move us from here where we're messed up now, where ZIALE is doing 1 in 394 people, to where we have 100% pass rate. What is it that we need to do in here? That's your strategy. What do we need to change now? That's your strategy. You dig deep into the whole thing and find out where the weak points are and adjust them. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great morning. God bless.